Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you, Jared, for stepping up. Would you take attendance, please?
Sure thing. Dan Castricone,
Here?
Gary Hebner,
Here.
Jimmy Breland,
Present.
William Clark,
Here.
Heather Kidda,
Present.
Chris Scanlon, here, Bonnie Takeuchi.
Here.
All present and accounted for. All right. Our business administrator was called away for a family issue and isn't here to put up an actual presentation on the budget. So I guess we just open it up to comment.
A budget hearing is typically really just a listening. It's for the public to reflect on the budget after we've had a series of budget meetings explaining that. Typically, we would have a presentation just to re-summarize everything that you've already heard, but since Brian is out tonight, we're just going to go to the public comment of the hearing. So if anyone has any comments to make about the budget, the floor is yours.
Excuse me, Ms. Mitchell, we're going to have another special meeting right after this, where we'll open it up for public comment on anything. This is a public hearing on the budget. Is there anything in particular that you want to tell us about the budget?
Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm leading up to. So this year there was not a consensus on the budget vote. And it makes me uncomfortable. I would think that with the work that goes into making a budget, that the time and effort would get you to the point where you would agree. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, my hope for the district would be that we would have come to a unanimous agreement to show that everyone's has a united front, and that your opinion on the budget is united, and it's unsettling to think that it's not, because it makes us doubt that it's what's in the best interest of the district.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rocky Rowan. So I have a question/comment. I'm not sure to what extent a question can be responded to, but to the extent it can be, it would be great to get a response regarding AIS, because I'm still not completely clear on what that looks like in practice in the school. So the way that I understand it to be working is that in the high school, AIS will now be provided by teachers during period X, or a free period, that's the correct terminology. So my question would be, will the AIS instruction take place in a one-on-one environment or a small group environment similar to how I imagine it was occurring before, or will there be peers of the student receiving AIS in the same room as the student while they're receiving the instructional services? And the corollary to that would be, will the teacher who is providing the AIS have responsibility to be supervising other students in addition to providing the services at the same time as the services are being provided? So will there be privacy for the student and full attention for the teacher providing the services? So that would be my question. And actually, so there's another element to that, which is, it was my understanding that there has been an expert opinion or report, I'm not quite sure, provided regarding the efficacy of classroom teachers providing AIS services. So just to the extent that that was delivered in any kind of formal report or letter or anything like that, it would be helpful, I think, to see that, just so that we can all be on the same page about sort of what research the expert was considering, what, if they were using any sort of papers, so we can sort of see the data that they're referring to, and who the expert is that was providing that information. So I think giving a little deeper understanding of how that decision was arrived at would just be helpful for everybody to feel comfortable with the decision. So those are my questions / comments, and if anybody has a response, that would be helpful, and if not, thank you for listening.
Is there any other comment on the budget?
I have a question about the budget.
I know that it's a board question. You already voted no on it, but go ahead, why not?
Thank you, Mr. Castricone. That's so gracious of you. Mr. White, maybe can you explain what actually happens if the budget gets voted down?
If the budget goes down, the budget vote will be the third Tuesday in May. And by law, if the budget does go down, there'd be there could be, it's up to the board. We could have another vote on the third Tuesday in June. And if the board chooses to do that, we could put another budget up. It could either be, it could be a budget of a lesser amount, it could be a budget of the same amount, or it could be a budget of a greater amount. That would all depend on what the board chooses to do. And so we would put that back up if the board elects to do a second vote. And then, we would wait till the results of that on the third Tuesday of June. If that budget also failed, I'm assuming that's what you're going to ask me next, then we would go to a contingency budget, and the rules of the contingency budgets have changed. The contingency budget, we would have to go back to the levy from the prior year.
And so if we go back to the levy of the private year, if the budget gets voted down twice, and we have to go back to last year's budget, will that be increasing people's taxes, decreasing it, or will it be staying the same? How does that work?
Typically, that would be going down. Bear with me a second. The levy last year was $12,475,108, and this one's $12,768,000. So the difference between the two would be we would have to reduce the levy by that amount.
So then that means that the budget would be less, and then there would have to be cuts within the district so that we could keep that budget.
That would be a possibility, or another possibility would be to use reserves or fund balance. Those would be the options, unless we got some fantastic amounts of money from Albany if they ever get the state aid runs out. But I'm not expecting big returns from them.
Thank you.
I'm not sure about the answer to your question, but if the board wants to, we could always put out an FAQ. If people want to email questions to us, either the board or the public, we could do an FAQ if people would find that helpful.
I just see there's so much confusion on the AIS. So, first off, the AIS is a service that's provided. It's not a certification. So each teacher, especially in the high school, right, the best person you would think to give someone AIS in physics would be the teacher who teaches physics, right? Not a generalist that we would bring in. The AIS is not special education, right? We're not talking about a special education situation at all. If a student has a 504, or whatever, they're going to get those services that they need that are required in the 504. So then it's a question of how do you best provide the AIS services, the academic intervention services, right? While Mr. White was out, we had conversations with Ms. Teed who was came up through, was the former CSE chair, and came up through our program in that department, right? We had conversations with Elsie Rodriguez, who's a retired superintendent from Monroe Woodbury with, thousands of kids in the school district. Both of them thought that the best way to do this would be the in-class teachers. Ms. Rodriguez was very jealous of the fact that we had such small class sizes that the individual classroom teachers could provide the AIS services because there were so few students that they needed to keep track of and deal with. So she thought that this was by far the best way that we could possibly do it. Then it would also include the holistic approach of the, knowing what the student is doing in class, the social emotional learning that she knows about the student already. She's already gone over the same material with the student in class that she could help the student to catch up. So, as a board, we decided that this would be the best way to implement this, right? If we pass this budget, which I'm hoping that we will, for a hair over $15 million, and it turns out in the beginning of next year that we're not satisfied with the way that the AIS program is running, it can be changed. But I think we're going to find that this is the most effective way to provide the services. Now, in terms of how many students are in the X period class when the student is having AIS services, I don't know. Jared, how's that happen?
So I think during the X period, can I elaborate a little bit on
Yeah,
the
please.
provision of it?
You're the guy with the degree in this.
I think that when we're saying the in-class teacher, your question is that it's not happening during the instructional period. Right. Yeah, that it's happening separately.
Is it like a homeroom where there's like 8 kids that the teacher is supervising, and then while they're supervising, they're also providing services to one of those 8?
Yeah.
Just so you can imagine what this looks like in practice.
Yeah, so across the continuum K-12, it can happen in Tier 2 or Tier 3 either way. It can be push-in, so if I'm the teacher providing the AIS and you're delivering literacy at the time, I might push into that classroom, and while you're delivering the literacy lesson, I'm working with that student or a small group of kids. In the model at the high school then, during the period X, our students will all be in an advisory based on their grade level, and then students that might be receiving pull-out AIS instruction would then go meet with that teacher. And generally that...
In the same room?
No, generally that would be a small group pull-out where, let's say the 10th graders are in an advisory in your classroom, and I was seeing 2 or 3 of them in AIS, I would pull those kids to a separate space and deliver that intervention.
Now, the contract that the teachers are working under, right, requires them to do the AIS services, right? It's in their contract. So in order to be the most cost-effective that we can be, right, it makes sense to hold people to the contracts that they've signed and have them provide the services that they've agreed to provide. They are all qualified, especially in the high school, to deliver the AIS services in their particular expertise. And I'm always amazed at the quality of the teachers that we have here. There's
Will the teachers be teaching additional units of time if they weren't previously doing the AIS and now they're being asked to do the AIS? Is that an additional teaching responsibility on top of what they had previously been doing?
Well, this has been in their contract for years. So if they weren't being held to that before, I think it's important that they be held, or we think it's important that they be held to that now. So it's not going to be additional time and additional compensation, if that's what you're getting at. No.
Oh, well, it's just,
Yeah.
the teacher's teaching like 6 periods. I don't know how it works, so let's just imagine they're teaching 6 periods, and now, and correct me if I'm misimagining this.
It's 5.
They're teaching 6 periods, and now they're doing 6 periods plus an AIS pull-out in the high school. So now, in effect, they're working 7 periods, whereas perhaps they used to work 6 and had a combination of planning periods and lunch periods, whatever, throughout the day.
standard is 5 periods. Yeah, 5 periods.
Right, teachers teach 5 periods. They can teach a 6th for additional compensation.
So I don't think that that really clarifies, though. So they're teaching the 5 periods. Is the AIS period one of those 5, or is it a 6th section?
There's a provision in our teachers' contractual language that they would teach their 5 as a structure, and then additional responsibilities would be a duty, and then there can be an additional period where 2 out of the 6, so in a 6-day rotation, that in 2 of those they could be assigned AIS instruction. So it wouldn't be an additional section. They would teach their 5, and then based on the AIS need, they would be assigned 2 of those additional periods.
Instead of lunch duty or hall duty or
It could
bus
be
duty.
in
or-
addition to the duty they have.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I go back to something that was asked before? Mr. White, if the budget goes down, what community use of the school would be precluded? We've worked very hard to get things happening in the evenings and after school. I know there are groups that use the building regularly. If the budget fails twice, or we go on a contingency budget, what could be lost? Summer recreation also comes to mind.
So when a budget fails, if we go on contingency, there'd be certain equipment that would be eliminated, non-essential equipment, any non-essential, capital projects, and any use of facilities it doesn't mean that people can't use the facilities. It just means that it can't be at taxpayer cost. So if there's any additional cost for the use of facilities, those using the facilities would have to pay for it. So there's no prohibition on using them. It's just that they would have to, if we have to pay for extra custodial time or security, that the group that was using the facility would have to be paying for that.
Thank you.
Now, I think I have these numbers right. 2 years ago, the district spending increased by about 4.75%. And then last year, the district spending increased by 3.5%. And in those 2 years, the tax levy increases were both less than 2%, which is why we're in a situation this year where even though the budget is 15/100% smaller than it was last year, the budget is smaller than last year, we still need to do a 2.49% tax increase in order to kind of correct that the deficit spending that's been going on. So I hope that the community will understand why there is a small increase and come out and support the kids and support the budget. At this point, I'd ask for an adjournment. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'd like to call to order a special meeting for May the 7th. Oh, I'm sorry, Dante, did I take you by surprise there? Okay. Call a special meeting. We wanted to get some information on our capital projects. I guess we'll do the whole thing again. Let's rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I have a motion to appoint Jared Kamar as clerk pro tem for this meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Kamar, would you take roll?
Dan Castricone,
Here.
Gary Hebner,
Here.
Kimberly Breland,
Present.
William Clark, Heather Kidda,
Present.
Chris Scanlon, Bonnie Takeuchi.
Here.
Okay.
All members are present.
Thank you, sir. All right. We asked for a presentation and some discussion on our capital projects, what is pending, and, what options, if any, we have, and asked the superintendent to provide that information. So we'll sit back and listen to where we are and what he's got to say.
Well, if I can invite you all to take a seat out in the down below. We'll put a PowerPoint up, and I'll present with our architect, Mr. Tom Ritzenthaler. Tom, you want water? Dante, could you raise it up a little bit?
Yeah, just shrink it.
That's probably good, Dante. Good. Ready to go?
Yes, sir.
You want to start, or you want me to?
Sure. So again, this is Tom Ritzenthaler from CSR, the district's architect of record, and we're going to do an update on capital projects, where we've been, what we've been doing, and what's going to be in the hopper very soon, and also an update on the Tuxedo Reserve, some of the stuff that's going on over there, and some recent issues that Tom's team has identified that we have to address. So with that, go ahead, Dante. Oh, you do?
Oh, sorry. Where am I pointing? Towards you. I think you're lying. Okay, that's good.
So again, we're going to do, talk about some of the projects that we've completed, what's in process, the 2024 Building Condition Survey, and the Tuxedo Farms development. You want to turn the lights down? Sure.
Yeah, it's a little hard to see. That's probably what's messing this up too.
Better?
Better? We get right to it. See, that was what was messing up the clicker. So again, I always show this at the beginning of every presentation I give. I just want to make sure that we're all focused that the purpose of capital construction, of school construction, is to improve education for children. So, and I know some of that is infrastructure needs, that's still improving the environment for kids. So it's very important to stay focused on the children. So let's talk about the things that have been completed over the last several years, just for those that aren't familiar. So this was completed in the summer of 2022. These are the front steps at the high school. For those that don't remember, these were replaced in an earlier project from a different professional, but it wasn't done very well. And the steps were actually settling and sinking, and then in the wintertime they were holding water and then freezing, and it was a major hazard. So we needed to correct that right away. It was really a difficult situation, so we completed the work. We provided the appropriate detailing. We actually put foundations under the steps to hold them in place and make sure that they don't settle anymore. The cost of that work was about $83,000, and they still look gorgeous.
And we even replaced the handrail.
And we replaced the handrails as well.
Were we able to recover any of the money that we spent on the first set of steps from the
No.
well, like an architect's work is pretty much guaranteed forever if it wasn't done correctly? Is why we have to wear it.
get with David on that, and we'll look at the history of that. But that's a good question, because it's going to come up again later.
It's going to come up again in a little bit. Okay, so then, as hopefully many of you know, we had two different flood issues, two different flood incidents that were claims to the insurance carrier. The first flood was from a plumbing failure in a toilet room on this main level, and had significant damage to all the finishes, all the flooring, all the ceilings downstairs, significant impact to the kitchen. All the kitchen equipment had to get replaced. It had all been compromised by the water. And all of this was then put back together and refinished like new. You can see we did all the flooring. The insurance company was gracious enough to let us do a pattern on the floor for some history and some significance. And so that was really a good thing as well. We also were able to get the stage floor, of course, was completely saturated. And in addition, we got all the rigging replaced because we discussed with the insurance company that the rigging was an egress issue. If we were to put it back in place, it had to be removed for the flooring, and it was also a safety hazard. We don't put rigging in like you had previously. And they agreed with us, and they replaced the rigging as part of the insurance claim. So that was really a significant upgrade that I was surprised that they agreed with.
And beneath the Marley flooring, which is protected floor, there's a beautiful...
It's an all-new wood floor.
Yeah.
So, sure.
Why did we put a beautiful wood floor and then have to protect it with the marley? Wouldn't we have saved money if we had just put the marley?
It was insurance proceeds.
It's paid for by insurance. Now, you can take the Marley up and have the wood floor. You right now favor the plays and the different presentations where they mask down and they tape off the different markings and points where the actors need to be. And so that tends to ruin the wood floors. And so we tend to want to put a Marley floor down to protect that in those conditions. But you can still take that up and have access to the wood floor for other special presentations. And so they like to go and put back exactly what was there previously. So they put the wood floor down first, then they put the Marley floor over the top of it.
But they did cover a beautiful herringbone floor pattern on the first floor. That was all laser cut, so it really makes the
Really.
beautiful.
And then we had a second flood down on the lower level of the addition, and that, again, had significant deterioration of all the floor systems had to be replaced. A lot of the wall surfaces had to be done at least up to a saturation point with the moisture. We redid the offices down there, all the furnishings, and all of that again was part of the insurance claim as well. So, it made a significant improvement, and it was paid for by your insurance claim. And your deductible in each of those cases was only $1,000, which is pretty low if you know other districts that have nicer. Not many of them have that kind of. So you can see at the top, I've recounted the two different ones. One was completed from February to September in '22. That was the first big one for $830,600 of improvements. And then from December 23 to March 24, this past year, was the second flood, almost a little over $350,000. So about almost $1.2 million of improvement, paid for by the insurance carrier.
Yes. Well, so the question was, the second event, which was the storm flood, was anything done with the drainage back there? And something was done. I wasn't here when that took place, Tom. I know you saw it when it was completed. It should be able to, but depending on the storm, there are some storms that no matter what kind of drainage system you have, they'll back up. So there's never a total guarantee, but we're certainly much better prepared for a storm going forward than we were in the past.
That existing drain in the parking lot was severely undersized, and allowed the water to, drop. That whole slope goes right down to that lower level of the addition. Really not a great condition. And what we did was we put in a new drainage with much greater capacity, and then we rerouted it to a different outlet point, which it didn't go to before. And so that's going to improve the capacity of that whole system. So then we had the energy performance contract, and this, again, was a $1.35 million contract. Anyone who isn't aware of what an energy performance contract is, this is where you go and do a capital construction which is focused on energy-saving measures, and you're using the savings along with your building aid to pay back the note on the improvement. And in addition, you're actually getting some additional cash. You know, you're actually benefiting from the program as well. So you can see over the 18 years, you're saving $1.9 million in energy savings. The project was $1.35 million. I'm not exactly sure what percentage of that was covered by building aid, but you can see that you actually are cash positive when you go through this program. And you can see the measures are LED lighting upgrades, as everyone is doing now, mechanical upgrades to replace circulating pumps, again, to be more efficient, building management system, envelope improvements, insulating pipe that were bare, the computer power management, so that when people leave and computers are still left on, there's the system in place to shut those down so that you're not wasting power for them to be running overnight. So all of that is, and this is a program that has measurement and verification to confirm that it's actually meeting the stated requirements of the program.
We were, from what we were told, we were weeks away from losing heat in the building. If you go on the website, there's pictures of what some of this stuff looked like prior to the work. We're creating a capital projects part of the district website so you can see all this stuff. But it was done very timely because we might not have had heat that winter.
And we also completed the roof replacement on the high school. That's the roof above us.
The flat roof.
The flat roof, the primary roof, not the roof of the addition. So the project is 100% complete. It was closed out. It was filed with the state last November. The warranty was issued for 20 years. We did a lot of repair to the chimney, which was in severe disrepair. And we did a lot of pointing along the various areas around the roof as well. We reglazed the skylight, which is, the skylight's actually right above us. These louvers open up and you can have skylit sunshine into the auditorium. It's absolutely stunning. We actually upgraded the glass to insulating glass so that it's more thermally efficient, so you're not going to lose as much heat. The original historical was single pane. We did review all this with SHPO. They were completely comfortable with it, with what we were doing. It absolutely looks stunning.
SHPO, for you non-architects, is the State Historical Preservation.
Yeah, 'cause everything we do on a building that's over 50 years old has to go through the Office of Historical Preservation, and they have to approve the approach that we're using for everything. And that, you know, includes when we talk about the vestibule doors as well. This project was actually over $300,000 under budget when we were all said and done. So that was good. So what's in progress? So right now in progress, we have the current capital project that's just about ready to come out of SED. It's the 2 secured vestibules, one at the high school, one at the elementary building. And these will improve life safety of staff and students. Again, it's a secured entry point at the building. It provides for that credential exchange. It does actually include the relocation of the main office at the elementary school. Right now, the main office isn't really in an appropriate space, and of course, the security booth is right out in the middle of the corridor. So really not a secured space. It's consistent with all the published guidelines for Homeland Security. Homeland Security does have guidelines for how we approach these secured vestibules, and we follow those. And remember, this is also the project that is utilizing the $75,000 grant funding from Senator Skoufis. So we have the emergency generator for the George Baker building, and again, this ensures ongoing operation of critical safety systems, you know, your fire alarm systems, your communication systems, IT, all of those systems, and it prevents potentially catastrophic events beyond that. A lot of times if we can't circulate water in the building and it's in the winter, your pipes are going to freeze, and that's going to cause significant other damages to a building. And I've seen it happen. Many schools have been doing this a long time. So there's a real focus now with most districts that they want emergency generators at all their buildings.
But Tom, we've never had one before, so why do we need it now?
Well, we've never had a lot, you know, used to be we never had phones when we were growing up, but now nobody can live without a phone. That instant communication, it's really, really important. It's a really important system for that. You can lose a lot of your infrastructure if you don't have that emergency power generation. You get continuous communication out to your constituents, to your residents, and it keeps your communications and most importantly, life safety systems. It also protects some of your investment, right? You have fridges and freezers that store food. We had that when we had the flooding and the freezers went out. You can lose a lot of your food supply, and until you can replenish that, you aren't able to offer those lunch programs to your students when they come back in. And the network, of course, the network might have UPS backup, but usually that only lasts, a few hours to 8 hours at most, and then you have nothing. So
you don't suggest that we just shut the school and send the kids home?
So, dependent on how the generator was set up, you could potentially leave the kids in session if we ran the whole building with all the current lighting and everything. A lot of times we're doing emergent loads on the generator to keep the size of it down. Generators are expensive. I think this one's $225,000. And they have to have belly tanks, they have to have a fuel system, to hook them up. But there are options, Red Cross Shelter, right? A lot of schools serve as shelters, but you can't serve as a shelter if you don't have emergency backup power, right? It's just, you need to have those components to be able to provide life safety and, running water, hot water, all of those things that create a shelter.
How many of the schools surrounding area?
I would hesitate to say probably, I bet you it's probably over 50%. Might be more.
I don't think we have any schools our size, other than maybe Florida.
I don't know. I think you'd be surprised. I mean, I could certainly survey the directors of facilities and find out, but I think you would be surprised. And nowadays, anytime we do any kind of building addition or major renovation or new construction, I mean, we've got the new CTE building going up for Newburgh. Those all have backup generators. It's almost like a standard nowadays.
So what's the scope of this generator? So it's not to power the whole school, but it's to power critical infrastructure?
Correct. Critical loads, infrastructure, fire life safety systems, all your IT systems, obviously the loads on your kitchen cafeteria so you don't lose food supply, those kinds of things. And really critical is making sure we can maintain the water flowing around the building as well.
How many IT servers do we have in this room?
Well, this is your main location right here. So, but you have servers in a couple different locations. So,
GGM. Dante, how many servers do we have?
We have 6 servers, so to speak. Their locations, really this GFB is the main head, this is the main distribution frame.
Yep.
Frames are subsidiary frames, so to speak. So if anything were to happen here, it would affect everywhere else, but ours are running here, everything else is everywhere else commercial. And we have USB backups for that, so we will always have power in case things were to go out, and the generator is the second layer of security for that. So I'm happy for that person.
And our node systems, can you just summarize what people online can't hear? Can you summarize?
so basically what he's saying is your main server location is here, and then you have redundant servers or servers in each of the buildings beyond that, right?
Not necessarily we have servers, they're more of switches.
Switch, yeah.
Communicators. They're not really necessarily holding data. All the data is here in GFB. Hence the name on main distribution.
So if you lose the servers here, you won't have access.
Then you won't have access. Right. Now you'll have a backup, hopefully. But if it will be for here, but if you get this active, it'll run the servers, it'll run those in the other building. It'll run those switches.
What is the cost to maintain the generators on an annual basis?
Well, you'll do weekly testing of the generator. That's pretty standard fare, and you'll have it serviced once a year. It's probably a couple $1,000 to serve, or, to service it, once a year.
Do you do failover tests?
I'd have to ask my engineer.
Power to the building, see if the generator picks up. It's like you would do in a home.
Well, yeah, you certainly have the ability to do that, and you're certainly going to test your generator every single week.
Every week,
I would gather, say probably every week.
unlikely.
Well, you'll definitely set yourself up on a schedule for regularly testing, and I know most, I know, like, my office is across from Billy Joe's, that generator was on every Monday morning for 15 minutes, and they test it regularly because they can't afford for it not to be operational. Yeah. And it's just a schedule that you set up. And then, and then the last piece of this project is the clock tower cupola restoration. Again, this was originally wanted to be planned with the roof project. It wasn't. We put it up to the education department as part of this project. And again, it's really about that exterior envelope, tightening the envelope down for moisture penetration. The tower is taking on water. It's fairly deteriorated. Your clock no longer works, which isn't to say that that's the biggest issue. But the biggest issue is, again, to make the entire building at the exterior envelope as weather tight as possible.
Is this on? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So these three projects here were approved by the voters.
First by the board and then by the voters, that's right. But I think it was 73% of the voters voted for it.
In what year? In 2022. So at the same time, I guess we reallocated some of the money that we're going to use for this from the roof at GGM. That had been approved previously, and we took that off and put these projects on. Is that what happened?
We created what's called the Capital Projects Fund 2, and that was so we could move money from the original identified projects to these projects. That's right.
I want to say that was last year.
We created the Reserve 2 fund. The Reserve 2 fund in 2023 in order to accept all of its donations into the fund. And in 2024, the voters voted on expending the monies, the 1.275.
The authorization of the voters was in 2024,
Okay.
last year.
Okay.
Because what they have to do, the voters have to authorize the creation of a capital reserve, and then the following year, they have to authorize the expenditure of the money out of that fund. So that's why there's two referendums that go with
I
it.
understand completely. Thank you.
Good, and I'm also, saying that for the folks out here who don't understand it.
So I'm a bit confused. Wasn't there at one point money in the capital project fund for the roof at GGM? And that was switched out for this project?
Yes.
So going forward, first off, the public needs to know that when they vote on the budget this year, they're not voting on this, that this has already been approved by them.
Correct.
And the board next year could decide to put out to the public if we want to move this money from the generator and the clock tower back into asking the voters if they'd rather spend that money on GGM. We could do that, or we can't do that. Maybe
Well,
David,
we've done
answer that.
it once before, when we created Capital Projects 2, so we could certainly do that again. We would have to have voter approval to create that capital project fund and to fund it, and then we'd have to wait another year to expend it. So we're going to be pushing this out a few years.
So we would have to wait theoretically in order another 2 years.
Not theoretically.
We would
yes.
have to wait two
Right.
more years
Yep.
in order to go back and do what was proposed in 2022. So the Proposition 2 in the Capital Reserve Spending Authorization on the back of the ballot was the proposal for the roof over GFB and a roof on GGM.
Originally, yes.
Right. So being that we started to allocate monies for GFB, George Grant Mason still has not been done. Correct. So therefore, it is obviously in a state. So that being said, somewhere between 22 and 23, we got together and said, we're not interested in doing the roof on GGM. We're not going to do the elementary roof. We're going to let it ride. Because
Well, we didn't say we were going to let it rot. We said we were going to reallocate to other projects.
I understand. So we're going to leave it in the state that it was in, 2 or 3 years ago, and reallocate the money towards somewhere else.
Correct.
I'm just asking this because this was never disseminated, and I do pay attention. And I the following year for the, the Fund 2, that we were definitely going to have.
I'm sorry, I just
GGM. No, wait a
I just want to
second.
just,
We were going to have the GGM roof done at some point in time, but being these are multi-year projects, many proposals or propositions.
I just want to correct a point. It was put out there. We did have meetings about that. We also did put out a budget newsletter, which included the proposition. We explained that in there. So it's not like it was done with public knowledge, and we did put a referendum out there, and the knowledge was put out there.
The referendum for the 23 budget, too.
They were
It was never, my point, Jeff, is that it was just never specifically stated that we have X-NAID over the elementary school. That's my point. It's like, I'm not necessarily concerned where we appropriated the funds. My point is that disseminated to the public that we had not decided to go ahead with the allocation of capital for the elementary school.
We did disseminate it, and we did everything that we were required to do by law. We put it in the legal notices. It was published. It was published in the budget newsletter, and it was discussed in open public meetings, which are televised. So I respectfully disagree with that. It was definitely published, and people did know about it. I don't want anyone to believe that things were done without the knowledge of the community, and the board voted on it after discussion, and then the community voted on it as well.
Fair enough.
Now, if you decide you want to change your mind, that's okay, but I just don't want people to walk away thinking that this was done in a way that people were unaware of what was going on, because they were.
Fair enough. I was ill-informed. Thank you.
I just want to add one other thing relative to timing. So if the board decides they don't want to do portions of this work, we're going to need to have that decision fairly quickly, because we're going to want, as soon as this comes out of SED, the State Education Department, we're going to want to go out to bid, because we want to get this work done. So, and if we are potentially delaying this another year or potentially even 2 years, all of the budgets that we have are not going to be valid anymore. And you won't be able to do all of the work if that's what ends up happening. Just because we budget an amount of escalation in our original budgets, but they're not going to carry us for, especially in this climate, they're not going to carry us for a couple more years.
Let me also add to that a big part of what we reallocated was for the safety and security, was for the security vestibules. The amount of money for the generator and the cupola would certainly nowhere come near covering the cost of doing the roof over there. That roof is going to cost about, $1.2 million to do, and the generator and the clock tower are going to amount to about 300, we'll see that later in the slide, but it's about 325,000, so we're still going to be a far shot from being able to do that roof, because we wanted to get the vestibules and the security of the kids first. The roof over there is not, as I'm told by the facilities folks, is not leaking. I know that we've had some leaks in the building, but my understanding is those are the antiquated unit ventilators, and in addition to that, that's masonry work from driving rain. The water's permeating that. It hasn't been the roof itself, other than, I would say, the light, the skylight, I think, has some leaks, but we can patch that. We can find ways to patch it. So we still, if we reallocated this money, well, we we would not have enough money to do that roof.
Okay. I know you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I have no doubt that some of this was discussed in public meetings, but we know that not a lot of people watch or come to the board meetings. Like Will, I met a lot of people over the last year who said, what's going on with the roof at GGM? It's undermining the building. They're very concerned. And I would like to know a little bit more about, the money was allocated, and was it clear? What was the board's thinking? The security vestibules I have no problem with, but what was the board's thinking in changing the priority of that roof? It is really don't know if there's mold inside the building. You're saying, and I know that they've told us that there's not active water coming in, but there certainly has got to be moisture coming in some ways when you have that back portion looking like that. Slide 1 says we're here, these projects are for the benefit of the students. There are young children in that building, and I would like to know that the building is safe for them to be in.
Penny, to answer that question, that's why the state mandated the 5-year building condition survey. That was a result of a couple of catastrophes that happened in the state because districts were skimping on facilities. I know one of the big issues was East Coldenham. There were children who died as a result of a wall collapsing. So the purpose of the building condition survey, which we're going to get to shortly, is to inform the board and the community about the condition of the buildings and alert you to things that have to be done. So no one made the decision to leave the roof as it is, which, by the way, it's been for at least, 30 years?
Well, we also did repair a section of the roof when we had the tree branch go through it. I don't know if anyone remembers that. So we repaired a whole section on the west side of the shingle portion, and that was all because there was obviously moisture penetrating from that. There have been moisture penetrations along one of the corridors that face one of the flat sections of roof. That has been mitigated, and then it was in one of the classrooms on the upper level of that building has also been mitigated.
And I don't want to debate, you had asked what was the board thinking at that time. I don't want to debate the pros and cons, but I'll tell you some of the things that we were considering at that time. And obviously, the number of school shootings is just crazy. And so that is taken up, and you're going to see shortly, that's taken up a lion's share of the money of this project. So that was a big concern of the board at that time, and they wanted to make sure that the kids were safe and that we didn't have any answer. Another thing that had arisen at that time was, after 30 years, the Tuxedo Reserve reared its head again. And we were told that this thing was imminent, and year one was supposed to be 2023. So we immediately jumped on that to find out what impact that would have on the community. And so we looked at that. We took all of their engineers' enrollment projections. We had a demographer come in. We also did a building capacity analysis of both buildings. And as you know, there was an addition put on the back of this building here, so there's a lot of capacity. The issue would be at the for this over. So the decision made at that time, since we don't know, and we do believe that this project was going to happen, that's what we had to believe we were told, and we were told that this building was not going to be sufficient to cover the students, and we also were made aware that there had been a long-term plan on a 40-acre site. We were getting $2.5 million as a mitigation for the development, and also we were supposed to get 40 acres of land. And We talked a lot about that. I'm surprised that people don't remember that. In fact, we even went to the town. There was a meeting over there. It was all televised. And we were asking the town for a different piece of property because they were giving us a 40-acre crag that only with 10 acres would we be able to use, and it would cost us $25 million to make that land, even 10 acres of the 40 being usable. So the board at that time said, well, this is a 100-year-old building at GGM, and it's 100 years old. It's got quite a bit of issues with it. Maybe we should look at the old plan, which was to construct another building on that 40-acre site. So in the meantime, let's get other work done, because there really hadn't been any capital projects in the district since around 2003 of any magnitude. So, and that was the addition on the back of the high school. So a decision was made to do these projects, and this is the rationale for them. And again, even if you don't want to do them, you're not going to have enough money for the, I think no one is going to disagree with the security vestibules. I would hope not.
Correct. No one is going to disagree with
But if you say, I'm not going to do the other two, you're going to have about $300,000. You're not going to pay for a roof with $300,000. So you asked what was the thought process at that time. Now, the development has been delayed, as we know. And we also, when I got back, I started talking to the developer, and we're trying to get updated plans, enrollment projections, and we're going to get to that shortly. But that's what the thought process was. We want to make sure that the kids have space to learn in, and we weren't sure at that time whether it made sense to put any more money into that building if we were potentially going to create another new building on another site. So that was the thought process at that time, and I don't see anything flawed in the thinking.
So at this point, 3 years ago, we needed to do the capital project for the roof at GGM. And then now it's, we can patch it and we can get by, which is not great. But we did get, $1.25 million from Tuxedo Reserve in order to provide mitigation for the kids coming in and make sure that they have a safe and secure environment. And I think that doing some repairs on GGM at this point is the most important thing that should be number one on our priority list. So how do we use the money that we've just received and didn't use to balance the budget this year, right? We've got that money sitting in an account. How do we use that in order to repair the roof at GGM? Do we have to go out to the voters again? Or do we need to wait until it leaks and then do some sort of emergency repair? But I think it's important that we didn't spend that money. It's still there, and that's what it's there for.
Well, I would say that you've got, again, a 100-year-old building. That's what I mean, the life expectancy when it was built and designed. It was designed to be a 100-year building, and guess what? It's 100 years old. So it's similar to, and I'm just going to make this, what people can relate to, if you've got a 25-year-old car with 250,000 miles on it, do you invest the money to get it, to keep it going another couple of years, or do you look at potentially getting yourself a new car that's going to last you another 100 years? So that's the thing that we have to think about. Now, as everyone knows, I've been out for quite a bit. I just got back, and as soon as I got back, I reached out to the developer, or the home builder rather, to get more data, because we are going to jump right back on this to see what impact this is going to have. And the assessments, according to their technical memorandum, is going to double the tax levy in this district. The assessments are going to double. So at some point, if their projections are true, we're going to have enough money to do the repairs on everything. So it's a matter of, it's a timing issue. So what we have to do now is a lot of planning, so we have to take up the latest information that we now have, but at least now we know there's permits issued, we know that there's construction going on, so I have a lot more confidence at this point this is going to get done. So to answer your question, I think now we have to do planning to figure out how we're going to address. And as you're going to see shortly, I mean, this stuff's a drop in a bucket. The building condition survey is $34 million. That's the amount of work we've got to do. The only building that's satisfactory is this one, and this needs a lot of work. So, and when you look at how much money we're going to have to pour into GGM to make it satisfactory, you may think to yourself, you know what? Maybe it makes more sense to go with the new building, but I don't think we should make a rash decision. I think we should look at the new data. I'm going to ask the board to, allow us to have the Suffolk BOCES, demographers come back and update. This year alone, we've had a tremendous drop in enrollment. It's gone down like 15% in 1 year. So between that and the project's delayed and the timing, the 5-year plan is about half of what they had initially told us it would be.
I think we had a meeting 2 meetings ago on the building condition report. One of your colleagues came out here and went over it with us. And I guess if there's one bad tick on a building, the building shows up as completely, unacceptable. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time going over the building condition report that we did 2 meetings ago.
Yeah, I'm not. I just have a few cursory slides on it. It's really brief, just so people understand what it looks like.
Are we good to keep moving forward, or we have any more comments or questions?
Well, we can always come back to things. Yeah.
Sure.
We can come back to anything as well. So here's what the current capital project looks like. This is the budget that was filed with the State Education Department, and all the associated paperwork.
And I just want to point out, because I've been in districts where one building feels like they're not getting as much as the other building does. If you look here, GGM is getting the lion's share of the security vestibule money. It's getting $615 to the $336 of Baker. Okay? So, I'm sorry?
You have to move the office.
Because we have to move the
No,
office.
it's part of the security.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want people walking through the building to get to the principal's office, so it's all part of the safety and security issue.
Or architected work right there.
And it's good work.
And-
Absolutely.
And you'd be surprised how often we do this. Move the main office. You'd be surprised how many main offices are in the middle of buildings. I'm doing one in Valley Central right now at Berea Elementary School. Main office is in the actual middle of the building. We're moving it. And the board debated it long and hard, but the community, and they actually had a separate vote of the community, and the community voted to move that main office because they felt insecure about having the first set of classrooms at the front door be kindergarten classrooms for one. So it was a hotly debated issue, but ultimately they moved forward with it.
Any issue you have with that, Will, with moving that office? Okay.
That just explains why there's a differential between.
Correct. Correct.
It is, but there's more money being pumped in there is what I'm saying.
This one's
We're not
fairly
neglecting
simple to
it.
do.
We're not neglecting GGM.
So if you look at all the capital, including the former and the current, it results about $4.6 million worth of work for everything that's been done and work in progress. Want to talk to you a little bit about a newly identified structural issue. It's actually, we've been monitoring it for a while now. And this actually came from the building conditions survey. We noticed, and I don't know if anybody, how often you go to the addition, the 2 stair towers on the end, there's some pretty significant structural cracking in the block walls. We came through with our inspections, and I had the structural engineer came out, and they wanted to do some more investigation. We've done ground penetrating radar to look at the reinforcing in the walls. They've done an evaluation on the design. And they are questioning whether the structural reinforcement in the walls was sufficient for the loading of this building. And we installed crack monitors, so that monitors the differential movement seasonally of the cracks. It is moving, and there's a little concern about that. They don't think it's in imminent danger right now, but they do recommend that the district either mitigate it by adding reinforcing to these walls or take a portion of the tower down and rebuild the walls. Let me show you a little picture of what I'm looking at. And so you can see those are pretty significant cracks, and it's not just in one stair tower, it's in both, and the cracks are actually all the way down from the top of the peaks, and they run down the window line all the way down to the lowest level. So, you know, something obviously isn't right with how this building was constructed. So you always want to catch things early because it costs you less money to mitigate, but it also presents something catastrophic from happening. At this point, we're going to continue to monitor it, but we're also talking with David because this may involve the other architect.
Yeah, getting back to what you'd said, Dan, is that we may have to either subrogate the claim through insurance or just sue them directly. We're going to take our lead from David on this. He's got a lot of experience with this, so one way or the other, we're going to try to go after the architect, the builder, anybody who was involved with it, to see if we can recover and have them pay for any of the repairs.
Okay, so let's briefly go, just let me tell you about the BCS that was done last year. Again, it's a mandate of the Education Department. It was completed and filed by the March 25 deadline. It's always filed the year later, the year after in March 1st. Provides a framework for prioritizing your future capital, as you might imagine. And it allows you to look at, so in the BCS, as you had stated, when health and safety or structural category is rated as unsatisfactory, the entire building has to be rated unsatisfactory. That's just the rules of SED, of how the Education Department has set up the system. So we don't really have a choice in that.
And Tom, for the folks out there who aren't aware, we don't get approval from local building
Right.
codes or building departments. We are mandated to report to the New York State Education Department Facilities Planning. They approve all plans, so we go directly to the state.
And why this is important is because when you submit a project to the Education Department, they're going back to your BCS, and they're going to say, well, are you addressing your unsatisfactory needs in these health and safety and structural categories, if you have any? And if they don't see that, they can deny you your permit. I mean, they can really take that approach. So we always want to be careful about that. But remember, the BCS is only one part of a plan. The 5-year capital plan, which is also a requirement, really adds in those other things, board initiatives, educational initiatives, things that are beyond just the bricks and mortar infrastructure of the buildings. And, it also identifies things that might be code upgrades, other mandates that aren't included in the BCS. The BCS includes a lot, but there's some things that just aren't covered. Like science casework is not a BCS category, right? Code compliance isn't. All of those things, because it just deals with existing systems. Your railings in those 2 stair towers that were just built in, 2003, the railings are all non-compliant. And it was permitted in 2003, and we're stymied, and it was designed that way as well, approved by SED, but it's still the responsibility of the architect ultimately. But those are the things that the BCS only goes so far, and then the 5-year capital facilities plan picks up from that and puts a comprehensive plan together that you then develop over a 5-year period for potential capital expenditure.
One of the downsides of SED approval is that they have a very small staff. How many people are up there, Tom?
Probably about 8 or 10.
8 or 10 serving 700 school districts. So it takes quite a while to get plans approved. And as we know, the inflation index on construction has skyrocketed since COVID. So if you delay projects, $1 today is not going to be worth $1 tomorrow. So it's always best to get projects done as quickly as possible because of those escalations. In fact, because they have so few people, it's costing New York State taxpayers billions of dollars every year because the projects are delayed by having such a small staff.
Yeah, it's been getting better. They instituted the third-party reviews, of which we do those as well. And so the review cycle has been coming down, but it has had an impact. So this is the kind of overall building ratings chart. Those are all the health and safety and structural categories. So you can see anything in red those are unsatisfactory items. Anything in yellow, those are items that are satisfactory, but that system is well beyond its useful service life. And so you need to start to think about the replacement of that component or system. So you can see the high school is the only building that is satisfactory. The others all each have something in red within them. And yes, for the elementary school, the roof is on this as well.
I have the same complaint as the last time this slide was up. No, we cannot see that the high school.
Oh, sorry. The high school is the second.
I can't read a thing on there.
The high school is the second column in. It's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the sixth column in with the yellow S on top. It's that column right there.
But
That's
for
the high
anybody
school.
watching at home, it's posted on the website under operations and maintenance, and we are going to be posting, we're going to create a new part of the website called capital projects, and we're going to actually put the building condition survey up there for everybody to review. We want to be as transparent as possible about everything.
I apologize. Just a lot of information to do in one slide. And then, of course, we summarize everything by category and by building. So here you can see the first column is the elementary school, about 8.8 million worth of identified need. Again, remember, that's only the need that relates to unsatisfactory items or items that are within their 5-year useful service life. So those are the only two things that we are required to put a dollar value to for replacement. And these are escalated. They have estimating contingency. They do have some escalation in them because we want them to be somewhat realistic numbers. And they do have 10% construction contingency. And of course, they're regionalized for Orange County as well.
You also might want to take a look at we were talking before, if you look at George Grant Mason, it's almost $9 million, and the gymnasium's almost $5 million. So you're talking about $14 million. So the question then becomes, and we're going to have to deal with, is $14 million, is it's cheaper just to buy a brand new building that'll last another 100 years, which would save taxpayers a significant amount of money, or do we put more money into a 100-year-old building?
We don't want to scare the taxpayers. If one of the air conditioners in the building, right, is 15 years old, and it's got a useful life of 20 years, they say, right? So the cost of the new air conditioning system would be up there, even though the air conditioner is working fine and there's
If it was
issues with it.
inside that, we would have to cost it out. yes.
Exactly. So
Yes.
the costs here are, inflated to the point where something is within 5 years of its useful life. It doesn't mean that it's broken. And when you say health and safety, it doesn't mean that it's injuring or sickening children or staff.
Correct. It's just
Okay.
those systems, and if it's unsatisfactory, that's a red flag. It doesn't have anything to do with your certificate of occupancy. It certainly would have some issue with your permitting, but, this is the system that's prescribed by the state. So that's how we have to, and, I would have to go back to the narrative to determine, well, it's within 5 years of its useful service life. Is it functioning properly?
That's why I didn't want to spend a lot of
Yep.
time on this,
Yep.
because it's scary numbers, and we did it once, and it's,
Yep. I will tell you that most of the, you could see the most significant amount of monies for the high school is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. That's mostly because of your antiquated air systems, your chiller, those systems, and they're extremely expensive systems. So that's why that number is the way it is.
Yeah, the chiller alone is like 1.2 million.
Yeah, the chiller alone is $1 million too. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Tuxedo residential development. Again, this was known as Tuxedo Farms. So again, we haven't, these really got bled out.
It's online, everybody. You can see it online, but it shows that there's about 440 homes planned for the next 5 years. We broke it down by quarter. The column on the left, on the far left here, this is this year.
Yeah, it's
25. This segment here is 26, 27, 28, 29. This was supposed to be, and I'm speaking loudly so you can get me up there, it was supposed to be about 780 to 800 in this time frame, and now it's down at 440.
But with any home construction, there will be an impact to your enrollment, and we're trying to get that information from the developer. The build-out that they're really looking at focusing on this does work, is in this section and in this section between they call the commons, which is kind of the market area, And then they're also going to, that's all Lennar's development, and then related is going to be building 93 mostly rental units. And the reason we don't show those here, because the amount of student population coming from the rental units is pretty insignificant based on all the demographics we had last time. So that's why we really haven't focused on that.
But this project is going to have a huge impact on the decisions that we make related to the facilities. When we do the repairs, what repairs we do we build a new building, do we keep the old building? It's all going to be contingent on what's going on here.
Right. And I didn't put the number, the student projections in the slide. I don't think I did. I did not, but I brought it with me.
And we just got this information, so we haven't had a time to really digest it and analyze it yet.
So at least their early projections for the next 5 years, and again, we have to get the breakdown by grade levels, but they're looking at, obviously the first year is marginal, it's 2, and then in 26, 44 students, in 27, 51 students, in 28, 36 students, and in 29, 35 students. So it's 70, 120, 165, 167 to 170 students over the next 5 years that'll impact your building. Now, again, it doesn't, and it was true last time when they had a more aggressive schedule, doesn't impact the high school. The impact is at the elementary, where you have lesser capacity to absorb there with the number of classroom sections that you have. In the previous demographics that we were utilizing with the more aggressive 11-year rollout, you were going to be out of space in the elementary within 4 to 5 years, meaning out of space. In year 6, you wouldn't have enough. You'd be well over your class sizes that you would want. So that was why. So this is a little bit of a slower rollout, but they're eventually going to get there.
They're delayed 2 years.
And delayed 2 years. They're eventually going to get there. So, again, we've requested some updated schedules from Lennar about the student enrollment and the rollout over the next 5 years. They've given us some preliminary information, but we have to break it down elementary to secondary as well. We do recommend that the district re-engage the demographer, Western Suffolk BOCES. They help us, and they vet those numbers, right? I mean, we can't just trust the developer's going to give us the most accurate accounting. We need to check and validate that, because they could be wrong, right? And so, that's not necessarily something we want to rely on. And again, the build-out is not as aggressive, but, the district's going to have to start to evaluate their capital decisions moving forward based upon, the potential full rollout of this whole program.
So I'm going to reach out to the board and ask that we move forward with Western Suffolk BOCES updating their demography study. So I'll find out what that cost is. There's been some change in personnel over there. I have to find out who the new people are, and I'll get a price on it. But I think that we should do sooner than later. We should get this done.
And I think that was it.
Is that it?
That was it.
Anything else?
So the demographic news has changed fairly significantly.
Yep, absolutely.
Which is favorable for us.
Timing-wise, timing-wise, it is, yes, because it's been pushed back further.
Correct.
But at some
We still have
point,
decisions to make.
at some point, though, they're still expecting, as far as I know to this point, we're still going to get a significant number of students that they initially projected. I don't know exactly what that'll be. That's why I want to have our demographer come in, verify it, then I'll have a number that I can explain to everybody what it's going to be, and when it's going to be, and how it's going to impact us, and what we should do to plan for that.
They still plan on the rollout of 1,631 homes, right? That's still in the works. They're phasing it over a longer period of time. The initial projections of the 1,631 over 11 years was going to be an impact of 375 students to the district.
Right.
And that's after
K
we...
to 12.
K-12. And that's after we took out the factor of students going to private schools. No, what we had verified was 375. I'll go back and double check.
Fair enough. Yeah, before we get into this, I just wanted to know your capacity when we start a budget, if any, how it seems to be.
Say again, Will?
Yeah, I was just curious, like, where, in being you're our architect, whether we, need new, stair towers in the back, or we need to do a roof over, the elementary school, or we bulldoze it and we start from scratch. Where exactly does, CS Arch, Tom Renzenthal, or where do you guys come in? You guys are our architect of record.
Correct.
So, but you're also our general contractor.
No, they're not. No, if we did any major project, they would do the architectural work. If it was major work, we would likely have a separate construction management company. And what we would do, in addition to that, is we would bid out. David would review all the bids that would go out. They would go out on the street. Those bids would come back. Tom's firm would analyze them. And just as if you were hiring somebody, he would do a background check on those contractors, potentially go to sites where they've done work if he's unfamiliar with them, and see what kind of quality work they've done, do a background check to see, we're done in Brad Street, make sure that they're not near bankruptcy. So they would do a lot of that work. They're going to design the buildings, and they're going to come back from time to time to make sure that they're built to capacity. Usually, if it's a big project, they'll be on site at least once a week to make sure things are being done appropriately, but they're not going to do any construction, and they wouldn't do any construction management.
Thank you very much.
They're mostly, Will, planning and then general oversight. I am available, Tom, if CS Arch needs
I just wanted to thank Tom for coming and giving us this presentation and explain the reason why I asked for it. 2 weeks ago or so, I was requested to sign off as the board president on the 3 projects that that the voters passed in that last resolution. If I had my druthers, I would have taken out a red line and probably crossed off the cupola and maybe had a real long conversation about the generator. But I'm told by our law department that I had no choice but to sign off on these projects. So I don't really understand why I need to sign off if I have no choice but to sign off. But that's a question for David, I suppose, as opposed to you.
So the form you signed, we had, the Education Department came back to us and asked us to update a couple of the forms. They actually asked us to send them an apportionment form, apportionment for building aid form, which we hadn't given them in the past. I don't understand why they wanted it now, but we knew, they weren't going to approve the project without it. So we had to do that, and it requires board president's signature.
So anyway, thank you for doing that.
Did we answer all your questions? Have we been transparent? Does everybody feel comfortable now with with what we presented? Is there anything unanswered? Questions, comments, concerns, anything beyond what we've already spoken of? Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Let me know
Yeah.
if you need anything else.
So at this point, the board,
Because, sometimes
the chair would accept a motion to go into executive session to discuss the, the employment history or... Oh, yeah, all right. Let's go back up and deal with the softball. 1, approval of Tuxedo softball merger. Be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the attached resolution dated May 7th, 2025, athletic participation agreement between the Chester Union Free School District and the Tuxedo Union Free School District. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, this is just an opportunity for our kids to participate in more sporting activities. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Jared, if you could make a note of the yes votes, and 2 folks were out of the room. Can I have a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose of medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, removal of a particular person or corporation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I can tell you that there is little to no chance that we will take any action when we come back, okay? Thank you. Board will accept a motion to return from executive session.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Board will accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you. Thank you. How was the sound tonight, Dante? Better? Was the sound better? Oh, yes, definitely. Okay, good.
No, I'm good, Will. I'll go out the door rather than do the steps, and,